You're listening to the Greeks Gridiron, live with Athan Hristodulu.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to the Greeks Gridiron. I'm Athan Hristodulu. Week 16 of the NFL has arrived with Thursday night's game between San Francisco and Tennessee tonight. We're doing our NFL picks as we do every Thursday. So, as always, make sure you like the video if you enjoy what we're doing here. Comment down below who you think are going to be winning some of these games we have slated here for week number 16 of the season. And, of course, subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the content we're pushing out for you guys. We're getting real close to 200 subs, so hit that sub button. I'd greatly appreciate it. Now, we have ourselves 16 games. As we mentioned last week, bye weeks are done and done, so nothing but full slates of games. And because of the weekend, we have ourselves some Christmas games. We got a Thursday night game tonight. A lot of football on a lot of different days. So let's talk about who's going to be winning, who's going to be going home losers. First, before we do, right up at the top here, if you do not see, we have our predictions record for the year so far, currently sitting at 132-90. The last couple of weeks have gone really well for me prediction-wise. Pretty happy with how things have turned out. So let's see if we can keep this hot streak rolling, shall we? So, first game on the slate is, of course, the game tonight, Thursday night, between San Francisco visiting Tennessee. So, this is an interesting one. We have the Tennessee Titans, who are potentially getting A.J. Brown back at the wide receiver position, which would be a massive boost for this offense that has been lacking players at just about every single skill position because of all the injuries they've been dealing with. So there is a possibility. I don't know if it's actually going to happen or not. I guess we'll find out come game time. But and also I'm recording this the night prior to it actually going live, so it has not come out yet whether A.J. Brown is going to play at the moment of me recording this. But 9-5, 10-C. Then we have ourselves 8-6 San Francisco. There's a lot on the line. The weather forecast is saying clear 47 degrees, so no weather to really kind of turn the tables for anybody per se. A lot of interesting stuff to look at here numbers-wise. When you look at the offensive production of both of these teams here, both of these teams are very heavy on the run and on the ground. Meanwhile, their run defenses differ pretty greatly here, whereas Tennessee is the second-ranked run defense in the league with yards allowed. San Francisco is only at 13th there, so that does kind of tip the scales in favor for Tennessee, the fourth best rushing team in the NFL. Meanwhile, when you look at the passing side of things, San Francisco is kind of somewhere in the middle. Meanwhile, Tennessee is actually close to the bottom. They're sitting there ranked at 23rd. But that does actually favor San Francisco because they are the 7th ranked best defense in the NFL in stopping passing yards allowed. So there is there's a little bit of a 50-50 scale here. You have a little bit that benefits San Francisco, a little bit that benefits Tennessee. I think ultimately it'll boil down to who has the healthier roster and who has the most players available for them coming into this game. When you get into like the nitty-gritty stuff, there isn't anything that really jumps out off the screen for me too much. I would say that if there's one thing that favors Tennessee on their offensive side of things, they are a little bit better when it comes to converting third down, which is obviously a very important thing to be good at in the NFL here. But when you look at San Francisco, they're fairly good at stopping teams on third down at a 37.2% stoppage rating. So ultimately, this one's kind of a wash game for me if I really look at it. It could go San Francisco. It could go Tennessee. And the way I see it, I usually say when in doubt, go with the home team. But I think I'm actually going to go San Francisco in this one. Not because I doubt Tennessee per se, but more so because I think that San Francisco has the healthier roster and is more just suited to win this game. Again, it is in Tennessee, home field advantage for the Titans, but I do think San Francisco can, in fact, come out the winners going into this game. Now, next up on the slate, going into the Saturday games, we have two of them. We have Cleveland visiting Green Bay, and then we also have the Colts that are going to be in Arizona as well. Now, when we look at the numbers here, games in weather-wise, rather, we got ourselves just a cloudy day, pretty cold, 33 degrees. Both of these teams are from the north, so no stranger to the cold weather here. You got 7-7 Cleveland Browns visiting the 11-3 Green Bay Packers. There is a lot more riding on the line in this game. For the Packers, in my opinion, yes, the Cleveland Browns are kind of clinging to playoff hopes going into this game, but when you look at what the Packers have right now, home field advantage throughout the playoffs, the #1 seed, they have more to lose than Cleveland does. And I think that when you look at that, that kind of puts the Green Bay Packers at home in a much more aggressive position to try to win this game. And Cleveland has also been dealing with some issues COVID-wise, injury-wise. Garrett Gilbert was starting for them on Tuesday, and now, what is it, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday? In 4 days, they got to turn around and face Green Bay in Green Bay. The way I look at this game, it really boils down to the Packers having a pretty solid home field advantage and more to lose, so they've got to win this game. I'm going to take Green Bay for the victory in this one. Next up, we're looking at the Arizona Cardinals taking on the Indianapolis Colts. I think two teams that are heading in a vastly different direction at the very moment. Cardinals have slipped. They've lost a handful of games recently, whereas the Colts have been, kind of storming out some wins, trying to get over the 500 mark, and they have done so on the 2-game streak that they're on right now. They just took down the Patriots, who were the top seed in the AFC for a week, and now they have an Arizona team that was a top seed in the NFC for quite some time and has kind of stumbled the last few weeks. It's in Arizona. These are both indoor teams, so that doesn't really favor anyone too much. But when you look at things, I think the turnover margin is probably one of the more significant things you're going to look at going into this game. Colts are plus 14. The Cardinals are plus 10. These are teams that turn the ball over, force the other teams to make mistakes, and then capitalize on it offensively. The Colts are a team that put up numbers as well, as do the Cardinals. I think that you're looking at, this is a game that what is the over-under for this actually while I'm talking about it? Is it listed on here what I'm looking at right now? I don't think it is, and I would love for it to be. I'm going to pull up ESPN actually and just, I don't know if I'm allowed to say them on here, but I'm going to pull up ESPN because I want to see what the over-under is going into this game. Because the way I see it, this is a game that, depending on what the over-under is going to be, could definitely be something that hits the over based off turnovers and based off, wow, the Cardinals are favored at 62.9%. My goodness. Wow. I mean, I guess it is in Arizona, so that's a fair. The over-under is 49. Okay, so that's a pretty high number. Whew, that's something I could see. I could see that. Both of these teams are averaging over 25 points a game. I want to say, where is that? Yeah, 28.4 for the Colts, while the Cardinals are averaging 27. I could definitely see this crossing that mark. Both teams are good at forcing turnovers, and they're both really good at capitalizing on said turnovers. So this is something that, maybe they lose a drive or two, but they still make up for it because of the turnovers force and the ability to score after said turnovers. This is a game that I think could be high scoring, could hit the over. As for a winner, oh man, the Colts have been running the football, and they have been running it so well. Let me look at the numbers here. Rushing yards allowed going into this one here, 112.8 for Arizona. That's 17th in the league. Oof. Indy's been committed to running that football, and if there's a weakness over there somewhere, man, the Colts would be quite an upset to call. And the Cardinals are coming off a tough loss to the Lions. I feel like the Cardinals have a lot to prove and a lot to bounce back from after stumbling to a loss against the Lions. But man, the Colts have been playing some good football, and they are really good at running the football. Meanwhile, the Cardinals are not great at stopping the run. I think I'm going to go with Indianapolis for the upset on this one here. I'm not really sold on the idea, but I do foresee a potential opportunity for Indianapolis to maybe capitalize on that run D and take advantage of it. Jonathan Taylor and that offensive line have just been steamrolling units the last few weeks. I'm going to take Indy for the upset. Fourth game on the list, we are looking at the Detroit Lions going up against the Atlanta Falcons. This is an interesting one because I could see the Lions pulling an upset victory in this game, but I also kind of feel like it's not necessarily likely, but this feels like a game that I could see the Falcons dropping. There's not a ton for me to really go into on this one when I was kind of like skimming over some of the numbers and stuff like that early on. I think the one thing that really stands out to me, and this one's a really funny one, is that Detroit actually leads their series history overall. Like the amount of times between the Falcons and Lions playing games, 25-13. So when I was kind of going over the numbers and everything, that was something that did somewhat stand out to me, and I thought was a little bit of a funny statistic to kind of find out. I was not aware of that. This is a toss-up. Both teams turn the ball over a lot. It's -4 for Detroit. It's -5 for Atlanta. Both teams are not great defensively or offensively. They rank somewhere around the 20s or what is it, high teens, I guess you could say, in just about every statistical category on the offensive side of the football and the defensive side of the football. I think I'm going to go with the Lions in this one. I'm picking a lot of away teams in this week. I don't know. The Lions are on a hot streak right now. Not like necessarily a hot streak, but are coming in with a ton of momentum, completely slaughtering the Cardinals. And this is just a game that I could see Atlanta dropping. It's in Atlanta. And, Falcons fans, I don't want to say something like this, but, Atlanta has dropped a lot of games where they should be winning the games. And, man, I could see the Lions maybe pulling out a little bit of an upset here. I'm pretty sure the Lions are the favorites going into this game, but I could see them coming out the winners. I want to see, 63.3% in favor of Atlanta. I'm going to go the Lions, though. Next up, we got the Buccaneers going in against, the Carolina Panthers in a NFC South divisional matchup there. Should be an interesting game between these two teams. Buccaneers obviously coming off of a massive loss to the Saints. Again, they just cannot beat the Saints in the regular season, whatever that reason may be. 9-0. You're supposed to say higher number than lower number. 9-0 to the Saints. Realistically, I don't see Carolina being able to compete with Tampa Bay right now. Offensively, the Panthers have been pretty miserable. The defense has kind of suffered because of that as well. What was a really great defense has still played fairly well, but is kind of suffering from just the poor offensive play they have over there in Carolina. Meanwhile, the Buccaneers did stumble in that game last week, but they just can't seem to figure it out against the Saints. I feel like they rebound, they bounce back. Yes, it's in Carolina. Good opportunity for them to play in front of home fans, but I've seen Carolina play in Carolina and also stumble all over the place and lose games. One game I can think of in particular that I remember watching vividly is the game against the Giants, man. Just talk about throwing away home games. There's a +7 turnover margin for Tampa Bay. Meanwhile, Carolina's at -8. I mean, Carolina just loves to turn the ball over, it feels like. So I'm going to go Tampa Bay with this one. I think they get the win. They get back on track as they get set for a big playoff push. Next one, we got Baltimore at Cincinnati. The last time these two teams played, Cincinnati creamed them in Baltimore. So this is a very interesting matchup here because the one time these two teams played, it was a blowout in the loser's home field. Now they're going to be in Cincinnati. Baltimore has literally nobody in their secondary right now. So for anyone that's doubting the Ravens, it's fair, but also look what they've done with the empty cupboard that they have. 8-6. They're fighting for the number one seed first place in their division, This is one where it's really going to boil down to, can the secondary hold in any shape or form Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and that offense? I just don't think so. It's a who's who in that secondary. Last week they played Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay, and Aaron Rodgers kind of had his way with them. I think that Joe Burrow, based off the first performance he had against them, and they actually still had some of their starters at least, are now looking at just a bunch of practice squad guys or guys they're picking up off the street to play in that secondary, and I think Joe Burrow and the Bengals can get it done at home, take advantage of it, and get a big W. Next up, we have the Chargers at the Houston Texans. This is definitely a trap game for the Chargers. They need to win this game to keep their playoff hopes alive and well and fighting for that number one spot in the AFC West. They are down 2 games to the Kansas City Chiefs right now with a split in their series. Chiefs obviously 9-4. They need to get every single win they can possibly get as we get closer and closer to the end of the season, and pray that the Chiefs maybe drop a couple of games. But realistically, Houston has 3 wins. Not a super impressive team. Davis Mills has been their quarterback. He has not really done too much to really threaten anyone. This is a game I fully expect the Chargers to win. It would be a massive upset to see them lose. And honestly, I mean, maybe not on the scale of the Cardinals losing to the Lions, but fairly close in that the Chargers should not be losing this game despite the fact that it is in Houston. Next up, we got the LA Rams taking on the Minnesota Vikings. Interesting game that we have here. We have a team that is well into this playoffs, and then you have a team that is struggling to get themselves into that group of 7 there. I believe they are actually the seventh seed, if I'm not mistaken correctly. I don't have the standings up here, but I believe they are the number 7 seed. The Vikings are clinging to playoff hopes. They've been a fringe playoff team for the majority of the season. They've been hovering right around 500 throughout the majority of the year as well. This is a game where both teams fare pretty well in the turnover game, +5 for the Rams, +7 for the Vikings. Realistically speaking, the Rams do have the better offense. They do have the better defense just in the numbers game. It is in Minnesota, And the Vikings have beaten some pretty good competition, but they've also lost to some good competition as well. They do have that big victory over the Packers a few weeks ago. This is a tight one. If the Rams play to how good they should be able to play, this should be a game for the Rams to win, but it is in Minnesota, and we have seen some crazy things happen in Minnesota. I feel like I'm picking all the away teams this week because it just seems like that's how things are kind of working out when I'm looking at everything here. But I think I'm going to go with the Rams winning in Minnesota. The Vikings do have a shot. They have a very good offense, but the defense has been the big issue for them. When you look at the numbers statistically, 30th in total yards allowed, 23rd in points allowed, 27th in rushing yards allowed, 29th in passing yards allowed. They let up a lot of numbers, whether it's points, whether it's yards. Turnovers are probably the one thing that they're fairly solid at, but ultimately you're going up against a Rams team that doesn't really turn the ball over too much themselves. I mean, you have Matthew Stafford, hasn't thrown a ton of picks. He has his fair share, but not a ton. Not a ton of fumbles coming from this Rams team either. They play some really good football. You have Cooper Kupp, who's been playing out of his mind this season and is having the best statistical season out of any wide receiver this year. I like the Rams going into this one here. I think that they get a big W. Next up, I think one that a lot of people are watching. I believe this is more of a primetime game, or not primetime, but it's going to be within that spotlight. I think this is a 4 o'clock game. Where is this? Am I looking at the right week here? Oh, this is a 1 o'clock game. I'm surprised that this didn't somehow get flexed into like you have the Raiders and the Broncos playing at 4:25 p.m. as if there's a ton on the line there when you have first place in the AFC East on the line for Buffalo and New England. I'm surprised this didn't get flexed into a later time slot. I thought it would. For some reason, I thought it was going to be later in the day. Regardless, though, we got Buffalo playing in New England. AFC East is on the line. There's a 1-game differential between the teams, and ultimately, this could honestly cost one of these teams a playoff spot. If the Patriots fall here, that really hurts them. If the Bills fall here, honestly, them getting into the playoffs it becomes a far, far less likely scenario sitting at 8-7, whereas the Patriots, if they lose, they're at least 9-6, and they still have a good shot to make it in. Buffalo needs this game. They got run over the last time these two teams played. Obviously, the passing game was very limited due to the weather conditions. I'm expecting this to be a much different game with a potentially very different outcome score-wise. I think both teams are going to have to throw the football more. Josh Allen's definitely going to be slinging it. It's going to be, what is it, foggy, 38 degrees. I wonder how foggy it's going to be. Is it supposed to be a thick fog? I haven't checked the weather for Foxborough at all, and I live in the Massachusetts area, so I'm going to have to check that out and see. But nothing like any crazy weather that we were getting that first time these two teams played over in Buffalo. I mean, both teams, they're really good statistically. Rushing yards allowed is probably the biggest thing. Both these teams, if they run the football well, that's probably going to be the key to success. The team that ran better the first time they met ended up winning the game. Patriots are ranked 24th in rushing yards per game. Meanwhile, the Bills are ranked at 16th. So ultimately, I think whoever runs the ball better is going to win, but also whoever allows the least turnovers is probably going to win this game. Bills sit at +8, Patriots at +9. So that's kind of the two big factors, I think, going into this one. Least turnovers and who runs the ball more effectively, I think, will force a winner. And because it's in Gillette Stadium, I'm going to take the Patriots. Next up, we got the Jaguars and the Jets, a game that I think everyone is looking forward to seeing here. Why does that Jaguars logo look so tiny on my screen here? Let me see if I can adjust that, because it is tiny on that screen. There we go. That's supposed to be the size of that Jaguars logo there. I'll change that live for you guys. So we got the Jaguars taking on the Jets. Two teams eliminated from the playoffs. Not a ton on the line aside from draft position. Jaguars have just gone through a recent coaching change. Meanwhile, Robert Saleh is probably going to, or he's probably going to miss this game based off the COVID news that came out today. Probably going to miss the game. Won't be coaching for them going into this one here. It is in New York, so there is that plus for the Jets. But this is two teams that have really kind of just struggled throughout the entirety of the year. Zach Wilson has been very up and down. Trevor Lawrence has been fairly up and down to a lot of people's surprise. Both of these teams are well into the negatives of turnovers. You have negative 18 for Jacksonville, negative 14 for the Jets. I think whoever can turn the ball over the least in this game probably comes out the winner. We've seen 4 interception games from both Zach Wilson and Trevor Lawrence. You get the 1 and 2 picks going at it. So interesting one to say the least. I think, though, I'll give this one. Oh, man, I don't know. Talk about a tough decision between two teams that are sitting at the bottom of the league. I'm going to go with the Jaguars. I think the No, you know what? I'm going to go with the Jets. I think the Jets get it done. When in doubt, take the home team. And I'm really doubtful about this one and who I should pick. So I'm going to go with the Jets on this one here. And the reason, Jets have home field. I think they battle through for Robert Salah, home field advantage, and they get the win. Next up, we're looking at the Giants taking on the Philadelphia Eagles, NFC East matchup here. Not a lot on the line for the Giants as they are about this close to being eliminated from the playoffs at this point here in time. Meanwhile, the Eagles fighting their way into a potential playoff spot, sitting at 7-7. They're currently on a 2-game winning streak. There's just not a lot going well for the New York Giants right now. Daniel Jones just got shut down. Offensively, they have been abysmal, 17 points a game, which is ranked 30th in the league. Meanwhile, the Eagles, first in rushing. They have 11th in points per game. They're sitting at 26th. There's a lot to like on the offense. The defense has been good to great depending on the week that they have been playing. Meanwhile, the Giants have really not been great in any shape or facet. I just think the Giants have too much going on. It's in Philadelphia. The fans in Philly are rabid, and I think the Eagles get the W for this one. Next up, we're looking at the Bears and the Seahawks. Bears have been eliminated from the playoffs. The Seahawks are kind of teetering on that same line right now as well, coming off of a tough loss this past week. There is something going on in Seattle offensively. I don't know what the issue is, but the good news for Seattle going into this game is the Bears have I don't even know what the issue is going into this one. It's worse in Chicago than it is in Seattle right now. The defense has probably been the one lone bright spot for Chicago. They're 9th in total yards allowed, and they're actually 4th in passing yards allowed. So the secondary has been doing a fairly solid job. Obviously, the pass rush, Robert Quinn Jr. is having a career year. Oh, man, imagine the Bears winning this in Seattle. I think because they're in Seattle, I will give the edge to the Seahawks. I feel like this could be a game that the Bears come out and win just because the Seahawks defense has not really been great. 31st in yards allowed. The one thing that they do a really good job at is keeping teams out of the end zone. Despite how bad the defense has been statistically in a lot of categories, they are 4th in points per game allowed, whereas the Bears are 29th in points scored at 17.1 points a game. So I think I will give the edge to Seattle in this one. Next up, we got the Steelers taking on the Chiefs in Kansas City. Playoff hopes are on the line for the Steelers, whereas the Kansas City Chiefs are looking to lock up their division. I believe if they get the win here, no, it's not them owning a playoff spot, I don't think, because of the fact that the Chargers are sitting. I think it's if the Chargers lose and they win, they lock in the playoff spot, if I'm not mistaken. But I think Pittsburgh has more riding on the line here as they need to win this game to keep their playoff hopes alive, whereas the Chiefs, they are cruising on a 7-game winning streak right now. This is not the 3-4 team that everyone was worrying about earlier in the year, myself included. When you look at the numbers offensively, the Chiefs are pretty much back. Total yardage, they're 3rd. Points scored a game, they're 6th. Rushing yards, they're right around the middle of the pack, sitting at 19th as they are per usual, and then passing, obviously, they're sitting at 2nd. The Pittsburgh Steelers defense has definitely fallen from grace. This is not the 3rd-ranked defense we had last year. 27th, 22nd, 31st. I'm in a bunch of different categories, so not quite the team that they were of last year that I was expecting them to be defensively. TJ Watt is still having a great season. He's killing it, but outside of Watt and Minkah Fitzpatrick, there's not a ton of great going on over there. I don't want to forget, I think, Cam Hayward, Cam, I can't remember his first name, Hayward, on the defensive line there as well. Excuse me for forgetting. But really, it breaks down to just how efficient the Kansas City Chiefs are on offense. As of late, they're doing a really good job. I believe they're one of the top teams in 3rd down conversions at 52.7%, so they're converting pretty much every other 3rd down that they run into. I think the Chiefs get it done. They're in Kansas City, one of the loudest stadiums in the NFL. The KC faithful are there. They're excited. This is a team that was struggling at the beginning of the year and has rattled off 7 straight wins. The last time a team had 7 straight wins this year, it was the Patriots, and they lost. So we'll have to see if the Chiefs can surpass that streak and take it to 8 in a row. I think they do in front of the KC faithful, and they get the W. Next up, Broncos and Raiders, 2 teams that are in a bit of a rut right now. The Raiders have more so than the Broncos, in my opinion. The Raiders have just dealt with so much adversity. They just barely squeaked away a win this past week up against the Garrett Gilbert-led Cleveland Browns. There has been a lot that has gone on for Las Vegas, and I think we've talked about that extensively on this show, whereas the Broncos lost Teddy Bridgewater. He's probably going to be out for this game. Concussion protocol. He was taken out on a stretcher in the last game he played in. Drew Lock is probably going to get the nod going into this one here. The one thing I will say is that I trust the Raiders' offense a lot more than Denver, and while Denver does have a pretty good defense, I just don't know if how poor the offense is being managed right now with Drew Lock at the helm, if they can really get the job done. Strong potential that the Broncos can get an upset win here, but I do think that the Raiders at home have a better shot at winning this one, and I'm going to go Las Vegas for the win. Next up, we got the Washington football team taking on the Dallas Cowboys in Dallas, and Washington has really struggled. They did not have Taylor Heineke last week, and they came up short. I think that this was a really interesting game the last time these two teams played a couple of weeks ago. Things got a little bit chippy. Very close game, 27-20, but you look at the way Dallas has been playing and where Washington has been the last few weeks. Yeah, they kept it close and then kind of brought it back towards the end of the game. But ultimately, Dallas is on a roll. They're sitting on a 3-game winning streak. They are doing a great job protecting the football. Their turnover margin at plus 12 is impressive. And Washington just can't really muster offense right now, and I think the defense is kind of struggling with it as well. They are the 30th ranked team in passing yards allowed, so I think that Dak Prescott can have a field day this week potentially, whether they can run the football or not, because the Washington football team does boast the 8th best run D in the league. I still think that the Cowboys can get it done and get a win at home in Dallas. And then lastly, we got the Dolphins and the Saints in New Orleans capping off Monday Night Football. Dolphins, they're riding a pretty crazy hot streak right now. I believe it is 7 straight games. I'm going to go ahead and pull it up here. 6 straight games, excuse me. They were 1-7 at one point, and they are all the way back to 500. You can argue what you want about the schedule and who they have beaten to get themselves there. Strength of schedule is pretty low at .429, but they're on a hot streak nonetheless. The Saints have struggled. They just got a really big win over Tampa Bay. They are in New Orleans, so I do want to give some of the advantage to the Saints going into this game. But both of these teams have not been great. They've been good. The Dolphins maybe a little bit better more recently than anything. However, just going to peek at the numbers here. The Saints definitely boast a better defense going into this one here. In points allowed, they're 6th in the league at only 20.4. Dolphins are allowing about 22.3, whereas the Saints are only scoring about 22.4. So, turnover differential, +3 for the Saints, -2 for the Dolphins. What are we looking at? Third downs here, 41.9% for Miami, whereas New Orleans is sitting at 36.3, and that number has steadily dropped since they lost Jameis Winston as well. This is an interesting one. Monday Night Football. I'm going to go with the Saints. And my reason for it, Saints are better on third down on defense than the Dolphins are. It's probably my best reason for that one. I think the streak ends this week. The Dolphins are going to run into a really good defense, a team that's riding high. They just beat the champs. I think they got a lot of momentum coming into this one here. Dolphin streak ends at 6. Saints get the win. They move to 8-7 and have a pretty good shot at making the playoffs as well with a big W this week. And that is my NFL picks for week number 16. I appreciate you guys for hanging out and watching along. Let me know again who you guys think is going to win in the comment section down below. Hit that like and sub button, and I will see you all in the next video. Enjoy your week of football and have a good Thursday night. I'll see you later.